Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Carrot Podcast, where we speak with leaders building the green economy to try to understand where we stand in the transition today and what is just around the corner. Today, we're going to dive into biogas, and we've invited none other than Charlotte Morton, the CEO of the World Biogas Association, to learn about the challenges and opportunities in reducing the release of potent greenhouse gases like methane, while at the same time transforming what are essentially waste products into solutions for the energy transition, pollution reduction, and tackling climate change. Charlotte is a global voice on biogas and climate change. She's a lawyer with a business degree, a former entrepreneur with a car sharing service in the UK, and most interestingly, she's a recipient of the Medal of Order of the British Empire. Welcome, Charlotte. Good to see you.
You too, Ian. How are you?
Well, thank you. And thank you for joining us and lending us your time here for us to talk about a very interesting subject, biogas. So I really appreciate that. And I wanted to begin actually because this was really interesting when I was researching a little bit more about you. I mean, I'd met you at London Climate Action Week, met you in New York again, and then at COP30, and we had bumped into each other. I always had great conversations, but I didn't know about this medal that you had won. Could you tell us a little bit about what this medal is and how you earned it?
Well, sure. It was great. It was a lovely surprise to get it. I actually had to look it up myself to remember the history of it. But it was the Order of the British Empire were some awards that were set up by George V in 1917 during World War I to reward services to the war effort by people who weren't on the front line. But now they're available to civilians as well as members of the armed forces, and mine was for services to the biogas industry.
Wonderful. Well, congratulations on that. That's amazing. And Charlotte, I think, from our conversations, I think you framed the issue of global warming in some of the, one of the best ways I'd ever heard. And then the importance of biogas in general as a solution. Could you walk us through that explanation or that pitch essentially of what climate change is, what the challenges are, and how biogas fits in?
I can talk about the role of super pollutants and why while I've been doing biogas for 16 years, which is way longer than I've done anything else for, is because of the impact that recycling the organic waste that we humans are producing every year can have on keeping temperatures down by about 0.15 of a degree. So, you know that the Paris target is trying to keep temperatures to 1.5 degrees. We're obviously already pretty much at that level, which is scary. So 0.15 of a degree is actually quite big. And so methane emissions, which is what those organic wastes that we're producing every year are emitting if they're not treated. And today, only 2% of those are treated. Methane emissions are 86 times more potent than CO2 in their first 20 years of life. So that's why there is that focus on methane emissions and other super pollutants under the Global Methane Pledge, because they can have so much impact. And organic wastes need to be treated anyway because they are causing human health issues. They are polluting rivers and oceans. And in any event, those organic wastes are valuable. They're resources, actually. They may look a bit yucky, but they contain the equivalent of 1/3 of today's fossil gas demand. That's a lot of energy. They contain a lot of nutrients for future food production. We need to recycle those, get them back into food production, and organic matter to restore our soils. So, yeah, they look yucky, but they're great stuff. So, and biogas is the best process. Anaerobic digestion. Who knew that we are all anaerobically digesting our food, but we are, and producing the energy out of them. So it's a natural process as well.
And I've heard you position this as sort of like critical infrastructure. I mean, all those things that you listed that are sometimes just mentioned as co-benefits, right? I mean, these are very important benefits in general, and transforming a waste product into a resource that also eliminates all these other negative externalities, right? All these other problems. It's really powerful. And what the thing that really surprises me is that we're talking about a really important market failure. You said 2%, right, of biowaste is actually being biologically treated. What's the potential that you see for this market in terms of the biogas production and recovery of these resources?
Well, it's huge. How to express it? Well, I just put it in energetic terms, and most of us understand energy, and obviously we're now seeing that energy demand is going to be increasing sort of a bit exponentially, particularly with sort of AI and data centers now driving massive demand that wasn't even in our sort of thinking a year or two ago. So the need to find green sources of energy is just going up more and more. And of course, energy that's homegrown is very helpful also from an energy security perspective. So being able to generate your own energy is far better than having to import it with all the geopolitical risks that are so apparent all over the world. Another way of talking about it is in terms of job creation. It's a massively exciting economic opportunity, and that is something that tends to sell more than doing something about climate change, sadly, but it's true. But to deliver this industry, which is going to require 40% year-on-year growth if we want to meet the global methane pledge, but already it's growing year-on-year about 20% if you look at the IEA reports. But if we deliver our potential, we're looking at something like 10 to 15 million new green jobs all over the world. So you talked about co-benefits earlier. We can mention a lot of co-benefits, but when you get to the sort of the keep going on the co-benefits, we're also talking about allowing people to stay working and living where they are today, reducing migration. And of course, migration is causing all sorts of political issues everywhere as well. So if we can reduce migration and allow people to, as I say, carry on living where they are today, that's also really quite important.
Yeah, super valuable. And you bring up AI, and I saw a very recent a report that was posted, and talking about how 75% of the additional add-on power that's been being brought in is mostly natural gas, right? Could you talk a little bit about how natural gas and that is an issue, and how maybe biogas could fit in with those types of projects?
Oh, sure, and that's a kind of one of the easier questions, because, and I think people don't necessarily, why would they necessarily understand that fossil natural gas is the same as biogas. We're talking about the same molecules, and so this is again one of the added advantages of biogas is it doesn't require any change in infrastructure in people's houses. It's a drop-in fuel because the molecule is the same. It's methane when you get to biomethane. So it's very easy to decarbonize sectors pretty quickly because it's just replacing the existing fuel with a green fuel.
Yeah, and I would have expected that would have really grown, be growing rapidly already because of that parity that you're talking about, right? And with this additional demand, I mean, how some people might say that we need a reduced methane release period, right? And if you're going to try to produce methane or to take advantage of methane production in a controlled fashion, even in a controlled fashion, that there would be risk associated with that. And I think that kind of fits into kind of going deeper into your work. Could you talk about a little bit about those risks and essentially what World Biogas Association is doing to address that?
Yeah. So just one first point, which is slightly different from what you were asking, but it's important to say that when we are producing methane from organic waste, it's from methane and a carbon that's already in the atmosphere. So it's not new carbon that is coming from the ground, which is what fossil methane is doing. And obviously what the whole point about climate change is it's being caused by more carbon being brought up from underground and putting it into the atmosphere. And so just using the existing carbon is far better. But yes, there are obviously, one of the things that we as an industry is doing is collecting organic wastes that are emitting methane, and therefore in the process preventing that methane going into atmosphere. And we've talked about the 86 times and the problem that is. But as a sector, it's also very important that we don't leak methane as we are producing it. So it's super important that biogas plants themselves are well managed, well built, well designed, well operated, so that they are minimizing any methane slip or leakage. You can't get it down to zero, but you can get it to easily less than 1%. And so finding ways to incentivize operators and reward them for investing in and properly managing their plants to ensure that methane slippage is kept to a minimum is quite important. And so some of our work is all about creating those incentives and making sure that there is good guidance out there to make sure that plants are designed, built, and operated well.
And is there like a range of about how much many of these plants that are maybe leaking, and how much? I mean, you mentioned 1%, so they can get, obviously they can do very well. But is this like a really big problem that you see all over the world, or what's the latest in the technologies that are being built in this sector? I mean, I know now you're doing certification and auditing. Am I correct? Auditing of plants.
Yeah.
How does that work?
So, I mean, just to sort of answer the first question, although it's it's not particularly a good story, but anecdotally we have heard that there are lots of plants that are leaking well above 1%, and of course, rightly, that there is concern and criticism about that, and so we simply cannot have it. And so, as the sector, sort of our job as the World Biogas Association to represent the sector, we are doing our best to ensure that that we can provide the tools to prevent that happening. So the UK trade body, which we also manage, the Anaerobic Digestion and Bioresources Association, developed about 10 years ago the Anaerobic Digestion Certification Scheme, and that sets minimum standards for health and safety, operational and environmental performance, and most recently we added on specifically a methane monitoring element to it, and so plant operators who design and build their plants according to the scheme will be minimizing their methane leakage, and the next phase of this project is about developing a standardized methodology for calculating the life cycle, the LCA of biogas plants. So it's important, two things to do this. If we can standardize the methodology for calculating the LCA specifically for biogas, then the carbon intensity number on biomethane certificates will be have greater credibility, and when you're trading those certificates, you're sort of trading like apples and apples, and rather than apples and oranges, if that makes sense. So the biomethane certificates are much more tradable, and we would hope therefore that they'd have a higher value, and so that should be financially rewarding the operators because they're getting more money for reducing the carbon intensity of their operations, and therefore, and the best way to do that is through minimizing leakage.
Excellent.
I explained that brilliantly, but
no, you did. I got that fully, and I think the issue too is, if you have a strong LCA or a strong methodology for measuring, the intensity, then you can also look at the baselines, right, the alternatives, and then you can kind of look at the delta between those two better, at least, and to just be able to better present the value that's actually being produced by this technology, right?
Absolutely, which is just, that's the biggest issue the industry has, is the fact that we are paid the same price as fossil gas.
Yeah.
But we are preventing methane emissions from organic waste. We are displacing fossil gas. We are displacing highly energy intensive chemical fertilizers. So if you look at all the sort of carbon benefits to what we're delivering, we're not being financially rewarded for it. It's crazy. But being able to demonstrate that how much impact we are actually having through an LCA that has been calculated with a robust and consistent methodology, should ultimately make a very significant difference to how much the industry is financially rewarded. It is crackers that the industry is dependent on subsidy today. Crackers, and yet we are. I can't remember the latest figures. It's either $700 billion or $1 trillion that is going in some way or another to the fossil fuel industry in terms of subsidies and tax breaks, and yet we are dependent on subsidies. Crackers. The fossil gas industry is killing us, and yet we have to beg for subsidies.
And not to mention that all this other investment that's happening within the same sector, the way I see it, at least, much of it is going to waste to energy, right? So it's waste to energy in the traditional sense, in the old sense of like burning everything. And so it's really interesting to do that. And I think that life cycle, the LCA analysis, is going to be helpful also for those different steps, right? Because you mentioned also sort of replacing chemical fertilizers and maybe the additional carbon that could be captured from soil aggregates. That's super valuable. And could you share? You mentioned something about the incentives a minute ago. Where do you see in the world that we're doing that they're most advanced? Let's say, where do you see traction, say, in the biogas industry growing, and what are they doing right? Maybe.
Well, actually, it is around carbon trading, and the UK ETS, the EU ETS. It's all about ensuring that different forms of energy and products are incentivized in the right way, reflecting their carbon intensity. So for me, that is the best way that if we can get, and we've had discussions with the UK ETS team looking at making sure that that system does properly reflect where methane is being mitigated, where carbon emissions are being offset, that's properly rewarded. In the UK, for example, we have a problem where biomethane and fossil gas are treated the same. And so one of the biggest, our lobbying effort, point one, is changing that, because that will just change the pricing significantly. It's already happening in Europe, but yeah, just that carbon pricing for me would be one of the fastest ways to get this industry off subsidy. But that isn't enough to get the industry growing. As you know, it's a circular economy process. You've got to get quite a lot of things in place. So you've got to get the feedstocks being collected. Feedstocks are in the control of different sectors. So obviously we produce our own sewage, that's managed by the wastewater treatment sector. Society produces food waste, that's in the hands of different sectors. It's all got to be collected. Then there's all the agricultural waste, the food and drink processing waste. So all of that somehow has got to end up in biogas plants. So you've got to have the sort of relevant collection infrastructure. You've then got to have the plants themselves. You need the energy infrastructure. You need standards. You can't just put gas into the gas grid. It's got to be gas that meets a relevant standard to go into the gas grid. It took 3 years to develop the biomethane standard for grid injection in the UK. Climate change isn't waiting for us to develop these standards. So having that appropriate regulatory framework in place as soon as possible, so that developers can develop projects that are capable of meeting financial close, is the most critical thing to happen if this sector is to grow. So I know you asked me about what our work is all about. That is a fundamental part of our work.
And I see that. I mean, I agree. I think the carbon markets in general are a really important, market-based mechanism for us to be able to bring in new capital. And just to be clear, like the EU ETS that Charlotte just mentioned is the regulated carbon market in the EU, which is the largest in the world by far and has has the highest pricing. So that's kind of what we're shooting for, I think, globally. And it's really nice to see that that sees as an important piece. And I remember a conversation actually with Zero Waste Europe and Yannick, and we were talking about how even though you have regulation in many places, you're talking about you have to sort bio-waste at the source, right? We're still talking about, even when you have laws or regulation in place, about 20% of it is actually being properly sorted. And that doesn't mean that it's going to be cleanly sorted either. So this is the feedstock issue. Is kind of like the core part of, but in the work that I do is I'm trying to solve that issue. Is like how do we sort bio waste at the source in the greatest way possible, in the highest volume possible, anywhere in the world, right? And I think that's something that the industry is going to be looking at very carefully. And I think it is a core problem with the circular economy. Really, is getting that waste sorted in the first place. And I know that you're doing a lot of work in India. Could you tell us a little bit about what your work is there, and are you seeing that market as a growing market for biogas?
Well, yeah. So I suppose just starting from my previous comments about the fact that it's so important to have the right regulatory framework in place, and the more that regulatory framework can be standardized so that if a developer is working in one country, it's not too different when he goes to the next country, so that he can get those projects together. We have developed a model global biogas regulatory framework. Now, it's great having a model. Putting any model into practice is always where it's difficult. So we are phase 2 of this program, which we call our Making Biogas Happen program, is about now putting that regulatory framework and adapting it into local contexts. Every country is different. Every state is different, unfortunately. So you have to have some adaptation to reflect what's actually happening on the ground. So we have selected a number of countries where we are doing our best to work with the local government, individual states, to adapt the regulatory framework and the International Anaerobic Digestion Certification Scheme to their local contexts, and to develop a biogas action plan in those states or countries, so that it isn't just so that you get all the various things that need to happen happening, because it's a lot of things that need to happen, and without a plan, they're not going to happen. So we selected India and Brazil primarily for 2 reasons. One, they're massive. India is the biggest country by population, and given that we're talking here about organic waste that we humans are generating, countries who've got biggest population are going to have the biggest amount of organic waste, and therefore we can have the biggest impact, and we need to have as biggest impact as fast as we can, as soon as possible. And Brazil also is similarly a big country. Both these countries also have quite significant political will, political support for the sector already as well. If a country's not interested politically in supporting the sector, there's no point. You've got to have that political engagement, because ultimately we're talking about changes in policies, regulations and standards, and they get implemented by governments. So that's why we're working with those 2 countries. In India, we're in discussions about getting the government to commit to a national biogas mission, which I love the idea of a national biogas mission. Every single human being is generating or controlling organic waste material. So you need to get them on board. And
is that making biogas happen? Is that part of like the appeal to every single human being out there that's producing this waste?
Yeah, sort of. We want them to love biogas, and to do that, they've kind of got to understand what it's all about, what the process is. There's a lot of education going on, and one thing that governments can do incredibly well, where national biogas missions, for example, can do very well, is about getting people to engage with the mission, whatever that mission is about. So it sort of gets people driving in one direction as well. Sometimes I talk about putting a man on the moon, and the fact that we were able to do that, the Americans were able to do that in less than 10 years. They had a focus and they knew what they wanted to do, put a plan in place, and it happened. And we need to be that focused if it's going to happen. Obviously, it's a bit harder recycling our organic waste because we're not just one company. We're lots of people in lots of different sectors. Everything's got to be aligned, and everything's got to happen in the right order for it to happen. But you have to believe it's possible. Otherwise, give up.
Yeah, we wouldn't be here if we didn't think it was possible. So sign me up on that as well. Yeah. I think that's it's a beautiful mission, and I think it's if we were successful in making bio-waste diversion and transforming it into waste into resource at a global level, I often think that, wow, that could bring us all a little more closer to each other, right? It's almost a way to connect with each other in a very sort of loose way, but it's a way to connect each other on doing something that's important for all of us, right? I'm with you.
And India, I get so excited by the opportunity in India, and I do think I've just come back from India actually, and this trip I felt that there was a big difference. That now we're being asked about how, and we're not having to say sort of campaign for the why. I love the fact we're now getting questions about, okay, how can we do it? How can you help us do it? So that is super exciting. We are working with 2 states in India to develop a statewide action plan. So this is the first time a third party's come in to help a state or support rather than a state to develop their own action plan. So that creates its own challenges. But if we're successful, and it's a very difficult thing to do, then I really feel that would be a great case study for other states and countries to follow. And it's just potentially so exciting. There are 750 million people in India who don't have access to safe sanitation. And so there's a huge opportunity to sort of address that at the same time as reducing the vast amount of currency that goes abroad, buying in fossil LNG from other states that can help go towards paying for that.
And it's amazing, and I think that you're almost introducing something completely new. But I wonder, is there like a stepping stone from, let's say, like composting into biogas, or is this something that just starts from scratch? Because it's capital intensive, right, compared to other solutions out there. How do you position that? What are the stepping stones to getting these projects off the ground?
Well, it's an interesting question. I mean, biogas obviously can happen at all sorts of different scales, from small cook stoves and smaller household biogas plants, all the way up to the sort of massive types of beautiful plants that you see in Italy, transforming organic waste into, just amazing amounts of energy, beautiful looking compost, because they compost digestate afterwards, and how they manage to do it, they clean up the sort of liquid side of it into what looks like water you're happy to drink. Stepping stones, it's just simply all about getting that regulatory framework in place and doing things in the right order. I think first things first, it's about getting people excited about the potential, seeing the size of the prize and getting excited about it. As you know, doing anything difficult, it's all about winning over hearts and minds. If the hearts and minds are won over and people want to do it, it'll happen. If they're not quite really getting it, it won't. So talking about the opportunity, getting people excited about it, as if we're putting a man on the moon or woman on the moon, trying to get them saying, this just is really exciting. Don't you want it to happen? Look at all the benefits it can give you, the jobs it can create, the other co-benefits, energy and food security. There's a lot of air quality issues in India as well from burning rice straw that could be addressed by this. That killing thousands of people. So it's a real question of what's not to like.
And today, right, these bio-waste, the waste itself is ending up either in an open air dump, like an actual dump, or in a landfill. Do you see at least any interest from the landfill operators to start investing more into biogas rather than capturing gas just within the landfills? Is that a growing trend that you're seeing?
Oh yeah, and that's super exciting actually. We have amongst our membership base companies with great technologies that are able to suck out the methane from landfills, preventing that leaking going into the atmosphere. And if you look at, I know, as you know, we've got lots of satellites in the sky now that are monitoring methane emissions, which is great news. But one of the biggest plumes is on the landfill site just outside Delhi, massive. So I think those technology providers that are able to suck out methane from landfill sites, that is one of the quickest ways we can prevent methane emissions from organic waste immediately. Obviously, what we need to do is stop organic waste going into them from now on, because they emit methane for years afterwards. So if we can get those separate food waste collections in place as soon as possible, which also mean that we reduce how much food we waste in the first place, which is even better, then huge benefits. And it isn't really hard to do. We know how to do it. It's just about sharing that expertise and demonstrating to people, case studies about how it's happening in different circumstances. I know Milan has been showcased as an example for a very long time. I've done wonderful waste tourism, going to visit Milan and seeing the wonderful bins they put in place and the different types of trucks and the collection systems that get people so excited about it. And it doesn't take long for people to realise it's so much nicer putting their food waste into a little mini caddy and separating out of their other part of their bin to leave the dry recyclables, which are then they can be recycled too. So it can be done.
I was just at a kid's party. I have two little kids, and we were at this event, and there was this table. At the end of the table was this giant bin, and it was just so demoralizing to see, all this plastic and all these, glass bottles and whatnot. And people were just literally pushing off the end of the table, a cake going upside down into a bin. And it's just like, and everything else that was there was all going into one place. And you just, you want to scream, but, I totally get that. I think it's something that will, it's not hard to do. It's just really not hard to do. We just need to provide the solutions. Hopefully you provide the solution and it gets done. I had the great privilege of working on a couple of zero waste projects, bars and restaurants. And this is kind of I think the really big challenge is that green premium that everyone talks about, right? So what's the additional cost of sorting that waste, taking it to a biogas plant or to a composting facility, getting it properly biologically treated versus the status quo today, which in most cases is you just throw it out in the street, municipal solid waste picks it up and they get a tipping fee at the landfill. Or, worse, you're going to pay for that composting and you're going to have to pay, 4 times the price to compost or to send it to a biogas plant versus actually sending to a landfill, and it just becomes prohibitively expensive, right? So it's exciting to see that there are additional new financing mechanisms that could make that green premium come down, because unless we find ways to actually do it, we're going to kind of stay here. And I worry that 10 years from now we could be having the same conversation if we don't introduce these new solutions. And Charlotte, I think one interesting thing is you're talking so much about biogas. This passion, where did it come from? I mean, you were a lawyer, and then you were running a car share company. I'm just fascinated about your transition. How did you get into this world?
Well, I think a lot of people get into it by accident, and that was definitely my case. So, I'd exited my car sharing business, and I made the mistake of going to visit some friends of mine in northeast England, and her husband had just set up the UK association that I mentioned earlier, ADBA. And he asked me to help out. Having been a lawyer, I said, can you help out with some legal agreements? And which I don't ever remember doing, to be honest. But he started talking about, he was slightly eccentric. He started talking about this anaerobic digestion. And I didn't quite get what he was going on about or why it was important at all. But I thought, well, I'm not doing anything else. I can't say no. But then after a while, you do start to understand what anaerobic digestion is all about, and you start to one of the things we had to focus on very early on was quantifying the potential, because everybody thought we were talking about something that was really tiny. There were constant references to a squirt of gas. And so we've always spent quite a lot of time trying to quantify what the potential is, initially in the UK. And then I was very pleased that one of the first reports the World Biogas Association did was the Global Potential of Biogas report. And that was the first time anybody had sought to quantify the potential at a global level, and demonstrate that actually just recycling our organic waste could reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 11%. That's quite huge, global greenhouse gas emissions by 11%. And also highlighting the fact that all those organic waste contain a third of the world's fossil gas demand. Again, it's not small. We're not talking about small stuff. So then you get really excited and you go, okay, God, we really need to make this happen. And then we did the report which showed how much we could contribute to the global methane pledge, about a half. And you suddenly start to go, hey guys, we really need to do this because it can make such a big difference. So yeah, I can't remember how we went down on that one. Oh, so I got yes, absolutely by accident. And then I haven't managed to leave yet because I can't think of anything else I can do and to sort of mitigate the situation we're in. And I suppose I'm completely driven to do that. I probably have to blame my mother, but I'm hardwired into doing something to protect nature. We're all dependent on this planet. It's absolutely stunning. It's stunning. You've only got to be out in nature and looking at how stunning it is. And we're killing it off. And I have to say that I find that really tragic. So anything I can do to sort of try and get this world back onto to try and stop ourselves killing this beautiful planet is sort of what keeps me going.
Yeah, and I like the way you put it, that we kind of all fall into it by mistake. So I that resonates with me as well, especially because I started out in finance and then I'm all the way over here. But that was really great. And are there major companies out there? Like, who are the major stakeholders that you in this industry today? Just for the non biogas or methane expert, like, who are the major players, and like who are you working with closely today?
Well, it's kind of an interesting question because the industry is still pretty distributed. So to talk about sort of major players, it's sort of really hard to say that. I can actually talk about some players who are super interesting at pretty small scale. Just to give an example of the range, right? There's one of my favorite companies is called BioTreasure, based out of the Yemen. I love it because I think the name is just perfect for what this industry does. And also he's sort of building pretty small scale biogas plants in Yemen, which, as you know, is a pretty war-torn country, but really helping that country both to treat its organic waste and generate its own energy at a pretty local level. Similarly, Catherine Putz is doing similar things at an even smaller level with sort of cook stoves and making sure that that they're minimizing methane leakage as well. So all the way from sort of that level, all the way up to engaging with the oil majors. At the end of the day, what we're talking about is, oh my goodness, sorry, my phone is just ringing. We're talking about having to scale this industry in no time at all. By yesterday, no industry has grown at the rate we need this industry to grow ever before. But we need to make it happen. So whilst on the one hand, I really wish the oil majors were not continuing to push out fossil gas, but we're working with the green side of oil majors because they can deliver the scale if we can change the economics of biogas, which is what we have to do. We have to change the economics of biogas, which is why your background is so interesting, because we have to get the money moving from fossil to green. So I see my job as sort of number one, trying to ensure that the green side of the oil majors makes more money out of investing in biogas than investing in fossil, because that way the money will move. And so we're in this climate mess because we don't price things properly. So we have to change the way we price things so that we get to that point that oil majors are investing in biogas, because they have the capability to do this at the scale that few other entities can do. So
I hear you on the oil majors. I see that as well in the landfill. Like we mentioned that the opportunities there, right, to create better outcomes or more make more money by being part of a circular economy rather than an end of life linear economy. So that resonates really well. And I think
And just follow.
uh,
I'm sorry interrupting you, but just following on from that, if this industry were paid for all the benefits it delivers, we'd be so rich. The value this industry is delivering to society is huge. It just needs to be financially rewarded for it.
And how are we going to do that? How are we going to get bio-waste valued for what it is to transform it into a waste, into a resource? There are a lot of new ideas coming out. The bio-waste recycling credit, EPR for food systems, and I'm very hopeful that we're going to be seeing a convergence of these different financial mechanisms, right? Whether it's the carbon market from the methane-derived carbon credits from prevented emissions at landfills with the EPR. We need to bring in everybody under the same umbrella, right? It's not just the oil majors. We got to bring in the Nestle's and the Unilevers and the Cokes and Pepsis and the entire food industry into this market. Because we've done a little bit of the math on this, but the additional value that would need to be added to funding bio-waste diversion and biological treatment is insignificant. It's completely insignificant at scale. Obviously, it's very hard to get it started from scratch, but once we do, once we find those mechanisms, just imagine if we could divert 50% of global bio-waste. I mean, what would that mean? Or even more, right? Zero waste as a philosophy or zero waste as a goal, right? It's talking about minimum of 90% bio-waste diversion. I think it's like one of those things where it's either 0 or almost 100. It's not one of those things where we're going to be stuck in the 30 to the 50%. I believe once we get the systems in place, it's something that it really scales very quickly. So I'm with you. I'm very excited about this industry, and I think it could be one of the biggest contributors to sort of bending the climate curve, slowing down temperature rises. So, Charlotte, anything else that we missed that you would like to share with us? I mean, this has been a fascinating conversation. I really appreciate it.
Oh, it's great. My favorite topic. Well, the only thing you mentioned earlier about sort of which sectors or which companies are moving forwards, but you also just mentioned the sort of food and drink industry and the big sort of companies like PepsiCo, Diageo, whatever. That sector has been moving forward ahead of others because the economics stack up sooner. If you're building on-site plants as, say, a whiskey distillery, the distillery is producing waste that it has to pay to treat. It's also got quite high energy demand. So if it can treat its own organic waste through anaerobic digestion and then generate its own energy, that saves money on waste treatment, its own waste treatment, and also it can buy the energy, or it's creating energy at a lower cost than it'd have to buy it in. So actually a lot of the distilleries, certainly in the UK, and I think that's happening across Europe, have been building fantastic plants for many years now. So that sector has been doing a great job. So quite you can Hendrick's gin, pretty green. Thank goodness. It's gin and tonic o'clock, Ian. Did you know that?
It's late on a Friday afternoon. So, well, wonderful, Charlotte. This has been really nice again. Always good talking to you. I really appreciate this. Just amazing work that you do. I hope, what's your mission for how many biogas plants we can add in the next five years, let's say? What do you think? What would be your dream output out of this scenario?
Well, our dream output of this scenario has, for some time, unfortunately, been to deliver the industry's full potential by 2030, which is, of course, the timeline for the global methane pledge. Unfortunately, we're a bit behind that. So maybe we can say we want to deliver the full potential by 2035, and somehow we can try and keep climate change waiting a bit for it to allow us to do it. But that's the goal. See if we can really scale up this industry safely, professionally, as fast as possible, to just move that dial enough to keep temperatures down for long enough to everything else to change.
Well, I hope you hit that mark, and anything I can do to help would be a pleasure to do so. So thank you so much, Charlotte. I wish you a great
Thanks, Ian.
weekend. Thank you. All right.
Thanks, Ian.